Hello, Year 6, welcome to today's story time. Yesterday we read Chapter 2, Part 1 of Sky Circus, and we're going to finish Chapter 2 today. They decided to start the search for Lily in her bedroom, but when Robert knocked and put his head round the door, he found that, well, apart from the clothes thrown across the floor and the stacks of Gothic novels that adorned the bookshelves, the room was empty. He checked under the bed, in case she was hiding from them there, but she wasn't. As he stood up, he knocked the bedside table, toppling over a small fossil. He set it carefully right, as best he could. The fossil was an ammonite of fool's gold, embedded in a stone that Lily's mamma, Grace Hartman, had found on a beach and given to her daughter. Robert knew it was one of the last gifts Lily had received from her, and as such, it was extra special. Lily had told him that Grace had been a keen amateur geologist, as well as one of the first female mechanists in Great Britain. The library was next, because Lily sometimes liked to sit in there and read, but it too was empty, as were the other upstairs rooms and the servants' quarters, which they hadn't really expected her to be in anyway, seeing as Mrs. Rust and the others weren't there for her to talk to. Finally, Robert suggested they try their den at the top of the tower. Malkin complained loudly as the pair of them climbed the stairs to reach the topmost room. "There's too much winter damp up here. It rusts my insides, seeps into my springs." "John's asked that we find Lily, Malkin," Robert said. "And anyway, it's either this or talk to those boring professors for hours. Which would you prefer?" "Well, when you put it in those terms." They stepped into the tower room, and there was Lily, sitting in the scruffy old armchair. Her long shadow stretched across the dusty floor in the last yellow slivers of fading sunlight. In her hand she held a red leather-bound book, which she must have been reading, but she slammed it shut as soon as they arrived. From the look on her face, Robert guessed she'd overheard everything they'd been saying. "What are you doing up here?" he asked. "Sulking," Lily said. "Do you want to know why?" "Because it's my birthday and everyone's ignoring me, rushing around after Papa, who's behaving as if he were the Queen of Sheba. And now the house is full to the brim with those awful old mechanists who are no fun at all. There's no one for me down there." "That's not true," said Malkin. "If you'd bothered to ask instead of moping around, you'd realize there are guests coming for you." "Who might they be?" Lily asked. "Anna and Tolly," Robert replied. "Really?" Lily leapt from her seat. "They're not here yet," Malkin said. "Oh." She sat back down on the arm of the chair and hugged her book despondently. The gold pattern embossed on the cover glinted. It looked like an ammonite, Robert thought. "What's that book?" he asked. Lily opened her mouth to reply, but then seemed to think better of it. After a moment, she said, "It's either nothing, or you'll have to be a lot nicer to me before I tell you." She hid the red notebook behind her back. "The choice is yours." "In that case," said Robert, "you won't be wanting the birthday presents we've bought you." "Oh, I didn't say that, did I?" Lily replied, with a wry smile. She leaned back in her seat and folded her arms, waiting to be impressed. "What have you bought me?" "Give her my gift first, Robert," Malkin commanded. Robert reached into his pocket and apologetically handed over the perished rodent. Lily took it in her palm and gave it an unsavoury stare. "It's certainly different. I mean, it's not like anything else I've been given before." "I thought you'd like it." The fox ran in his long pink tongue round his whiskers. "Keep it safe. A lot of thought went into that." Lily shrugged. Robert watched as she reluctantly put the dead mouse away in the pockets of her dress. "Where's your present, Robert?" Malkin yapped. "I have it somewhere." Robert made a show of searching through his jacket. "I'm just not quite sure where." "While I'm looking, do you want to see a new trick I've learned?" "You're certainly dressed for it," she retorted. "You look like a proper stage conjurer." "In that outfit?" She checked herself. I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." "That's all right," Robert said. "Half his family, the bad half, had been magicians. He didn't really like to think of them, but his ma and sister, who'd given him this moon locket, were theatrical mediums. They wrote letters sometimes telling him about their enchanting escapades as they travelled and performed alongside conjurers and the like, and ever since he'd started corresponding with them, magic was an interest that had grown on him. Oh, I know where it is. He tapped Lily's dress pocket on the opposite side from the dead mouse. Have a look in there. Lily put her hand in her pocket and pulled out an envelope tied with a red ribbon. How did you do that? She asked, astounded. Robert grinned. A little bit of sleight of hand. It's the same as picking pockets, except you put something in instead of taking it out. What's in the envelope? Open it and see. It feels heavy. She tore along the side of the envelope and tipped the pocket watch into the palm of her hand. You fixed it? Robert nodded. Lily examined the watch, her wide, excited eyes reflected in the brass case. You've stamped my initials on the front, and it's ticking again, she exclaimed, putting it up to her ear. A broad smile burst across her face. She pressed the crown switch, and the case flew open to reveal a second hand sweeping round the clock, above the slower minute and hour hands. There's something else, Robert said. Taking the watch from her, he twisted the crown 3 times. A fourth hand appeared from behind the hour hand and swirled around the watch. He stopped it over the minute hand, and the watch chimed, loud as a bell. I added an alarm, he explained. I thought it might come in useful. I bet you had to rejig the entire workings to get it to do that, Lily said. Not the entire workings, just a few cogs and levers here and there. I learned a lot of it from your pa's teaching. He's been showing me how to move mechanical workings about to change the way a thing functions. Well, it's the best present ever. Lily looked so proud of him. What about my gift? Malkin asked haughtily. That was good too, but this is even better. Thank you. She kissed Malkin on the snout and Robert on the cheek. It's a pleasure, Robert mumbled, fiddling with his cufflinks as a wave of heat flushed through him. Now you have all the time in the world. Lily laughed. And I shall keep it always in my pocket. We ought to go downstairs and join the party, Malkin suggested. Perhaps. Lily picked up her book and stepped towards the door, and then she stopped and turned mischievously towards the telescope and the east window. I thought we might only stay at the party for a little bit. There's somewhere else I wanted to go. Where's that? Robert asked. Take a look. She tilted the telescope towards him. Robert bent down and squinted through the eyepiece. The twilight countryside was swathed in patches of fog, thick as fallen clouds. What am I looking for? He asked. Beyond the last house on the left, in the meadow, by the bend in the river, at the far end of the village, Lily pointed for him, and through a gap in the mist, Robert spotted it. A red and white striped hot air balloon and ship-shaped wooden gondola, tethered beside an enormous big top that had been erected inside a high, white, wooden fence. The balloon's silks flickered like an oil lamp, illuminating a long queue of excited-looking villagers running all the way down from the lane at the edge of the field to the kiosk and spiked gates set into the high fence around the circus. Let me look. I can't see a thing. Malkin bounced about at Lily's feet and scraped at Robert's leg. Foxes don't do telescopes. Robert shifted his focus to the sign above the entranceway. Slimwood's Stupendous Sky Circus, he read. That's where we're going. Lily handed him the birthday card. It's an odd poem, he said at last, when he'd read it. What does it mean? And what are the 2 clues? This is the first one. Lily showed him the ticket. Robert was dumbfounded by the drawing of the winged girl and the message. And the second? He asked. This. Lily pulled a red notebook from behind her back. It belonged to my mamma. It's about a project of hers to design mechanical wings, she explained, as Robert flipped through the pages of amazing drawings and sketches of winged figures. You've no idea who sent these? Malkin asked. Maybe this winged girl, Angelique. She asked to see us. I think she might be a hybrid too, like me. She looks nice. I'm not sure, Lily. How would she have got hold of your Mars notebook? Robert tapped the red cover. Something about the notebook's sudden and unexpected appearance made his head itch and worry. It could be a trap. Why else would whoever had this book send it to you, rather than to your father? Because it's my birthday. Lily snatched the note back and shut it with a snap. But how would they know that? He handed her back the tickets and card as well. Don't you think it's odd for a circus to come to Brackenbridge? There's not been one before. Such grand shows never normally visit such tiny villages. Malkin stuck his tongue out of the side of his mouth. Robert has a point, he said. For them to arrive on your birthday of all days. And then there's these clues and presents and the invite. I mean, what on clunking earth? Oh, I don't know, Malkin. That's why we should go and find out. Lily looked at the pocket watch. It's almost 6:20 now. We can probably arrive at the circus before it starts at 7:30. See the show, meet Angelique, and be back by 9, before the party's even halfway over. We can't just disappear without speaking to any of our guests. The fox wrinkled his nose disapprovingly. Your father's expecting you to put in an appearance. Then we shall. Greet everyone briefly before we sneak off, said Lily. What do you think, Robert? Robert wasn't certain they should be going at all. He wondered if he should mention the fact that Lily's Da was planning a surprise speech and present giving at 9, but then he remembered he'd promised to keep that a secret. Did such promises apply if you were running off to see the circus? He thought he'd best keep his mouth shut, just in case they did. If it looked like they weren't going to be back in time, he might mention it to Lily then, to be sure she'd get a wriggle on. Besides, he did love a puzzle, and this one was very intriguing. The circus could be fun, and this might be his only chance to see it. Fine, he said at last, let's do that. But if we get in trouble, Malkin added, it was your plan. Lily ruffled his ears. We won't get into trouble. When have we ever got into trouble? The fox sighed deeply. I'm not going to even dignify that with a response. Lily picked up the ticket, card, and notebook. She was glad she had a new mystery to solve. At last she felt as if she was doing something exciting and worthwhile on her birthday. Don't worry so much, both of you, she said, shutting the window. We'll be back before Papa's even missed us. Okay. Right, well, join me tomorrow for Chapter 3.